This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.
What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to a Let's Go Win podcast. And as per usual, we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. And I know we are going to get better today because the gentleman I'm bringing on today, he has a cool, I'm excited to hear more about it because it's a way different way of going about the brain. And I'm excited to hear how he discovered it. Liam Naden is a transformative teacher, speaker, and author who helps successful people overcome limitations, guiding them to reset their minds and think creatively. Using a science-based method, he unlocks their natural problem-solving ability, leading to rewarding and fulfilling life. His approach, let yourself off the hook, aligns with the brain's creativity to find solutions, resulting in lasting success without struggles and stress. And Liam, you're right up my alley, brother. I cannot stand limited thinking and self-limiting beliefs. So I think that's part of what you're talking about. But anyway, man, I'm excited to hear about it. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, JM. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Oh, it's truly a pleasure, man. It is. And I want to ask you, let yourself off the hook. How did you come up with that terminology? I think what the approach means, but where did this come from, Liam?
Well, it's really from the concept that, you know, most of the time what people are trying to do is they're trying to manage their life and solve their problems and achieve all their goals, but they're stuck. And the reason they're stuck is because they're stressed. And when you're stressed and frustrated and, you know, trying to make things, trying hard and struggling, what you're actually doing is you're activating the wrong part of your brain. You're activating a part of your brain that doesn't have the answers to all of your problems. And you're actually shutting down the part of your brain that does. So when you let yourself off the hook, what you're really doing is you're giving up the frustration and the stress and the struggle and allowing this other part of your brain, which I call your creative brain, you're really allowing it to do what it's designed to do, which is to lead you actually along the easiest and simplest path to giving you everything you want and making you what you're here to be, which is the best you can be.
How did you discover this? Because I think anybody listening says, look, man, I don't want to be stressed out. I want to be more creative. And when I think of creative, I think of fun and I think of alive and bright colors and all the amazing things with art that you see. How did you come upon doing this to say, look, I want to activate this side. I don't want to feel stressed. I don't want to live in this crazy world that we live in today. How'd you fall into this?
Well, I was really lucky. I had the greatest gift that anyone could have, and it was certainly the greatest gift of my life is that I went from being a multi-millionaire to losing everything and becoming homeless. And that was in my mid-40s. And I had to move back in with my elderly mother and sleep on the sofa in her living room because I had absolutely nothing. She used to have to go out to work every day just to put food on the table, you know. So I had absolutely nothing. But through that experience, what actually happened is I went from being a super stressed high achiever, setting higher goals, or, you know, always learning more, going to more seminars, going to workshops, using my brain differently, you know, setting big goals, being motivated, and really studying everything I could about success, about how to rewire your brain and change your thoughts and be a positive thinker and all those sorts of things. I went from someone who was like that, who on the face of it was successful, but I had a whole lot of problems and stress. And I used to think, and we often see this, actually we're told that that's the price you pay of success is stress and problems. But after I lost everything, something happened in my brain. And it took me a few years to figure out what had happened from a research point of view, if you like, to understand it. But what actually happened was I started to, without knowing it, start to operate from a different part of my brain. And what happened then was really interesting because instead of me chasing after success, which I'd always been doing, you know, I was the guy who went to all the seminars. You know, I went all over the world I did fire walks and you name it. I read all the books, I did all the courses, a lot of them. But I went from really chasing after success to, in a weird sort of way, success coming after me. And I'm not really talking about the law of attraction because everyone's heard about that, but there was something going on that wasn't in my control. And what it was people were coming into my life unexpectedly. Situations and opportunities were coming up unexpectedly. And before I knew it, I was actually not only having a much more fulfilling life, doing way more exciting things, being in a far better relationship than I'd ever been in before, being a lot happier. But I remember thinking one day, I don't have any problems and stress. Things are just sort of falling into place. What's going on here? So that's when I thought I need to figure out what I'm doing differently, because what it is, I want to make sure I keep doing it. And that's what really led me to understand that despite all of the stuff that I'd studied, the thing that I'd been missing was how our brain actually works. And very few of us have been taught, if any of us have been taught, how it actually works. I mean, we've heard about the subconscious and the conscious mind, but it goes way beyond a different understanding, what I realized to that, which is how this machine, which is designed to have us survive, have us thrive, have us be the best that we can be, we need to figure out how to use it. And I was using it without knowing it in a different way, and I was getting completely different results.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I've heard so many times when you have this thing that I'm sure at the time going from multi-millionaire to homeless, it's not like yes, I am now lost everything. I'm sure you're not fired up that this happened. That's a pretty devastating thing to happen. And I'm not sure how long you were in that place where you're, woe is me and being a victim, but you found this way out of it. And it's not the first time I've heard it. So there's something to this where once, I guess, you let go of everything, expectations perhaps. And as you were talking, the word flow kept coming into my mind, where you said it's not about law of attraction per se, but it is about, at least this is my interpretation, starting to be aligned with your natural self, allowing things to come into your life without forcing the issue. That's kind of how I interpreted that. Am I close, brother, or am I reaching for something?
Absolutely, you're spot on. And the interesting thing is, this is all biological. This is, you talk about letting go. That's sort of a description of a biological process. And we can talk a little bit about how it works biologically, but this is what I started to understand. This isn't something you need to train your mind to think positive or try and force anything. Force is actually what blocks your success. And it's biological, because everything in nature, this was the thing I've been missing, everything in nature is wired to be the best that it can be. Because when an organism is the best that it can be, it has the greatest chance for survival. And survival is the primary purpose of all living things, including us. So what that means is you have the greatest chance for survival when you're best, which means when you're your happiest, when you're doing what you should be doing to be your most productive. And you mentioned earlier, that's when you're creative. And when you're the best that you can be, that's what gives you the greatest chance for your survival. But it makes you happy. That's when you're your happiest. That's when you are happy. You're loving and all those sorts of things. But this is how the brain is designed. So when you let yourself off the hook, instead of trying to force things to happen and block that flow, you actually activate a different part of your brain. And this is the part of your brain whose sole job is to bring to you and make sure that you do everything you need to be the best that you can be, so that you have the greatest chance for your survival. But because we're not aware of this part of our brain, and we're not aware of how it works, we don't allow it to do its job. We're trying to force things to happen, and that's not the way it works. Our brain is far more powerful than our thoughts. And this is why things like coincidences, synchronicity, chance events, when you start to see the big picture, you realize that's not what they are. This is your brain at work. This is your infinite machine at work, doing things to make sure that you're living the best life that you're supposed to be living.
I'm curious if the modern world, because we have kind of created stressors, right? And you said the body is meant to survive. And I think fight or flight, going back to caveman days where, look, the big challenge was a saber-toothed tiger. That's a real stress. Not finding food, that's a real stress. We have these created responsibilities and stress that's not really life or death, but it's putting us in this constant fight or flight mentality, which doesn't allow you to perform in your best. And again, the word flow is really important for me. I would rather flow through things than fight. Is that just something that we didn't learn to really adapt to the modern world? And that's how we've created so much of this. There's saber-tooth tigers everywhere. That's what we've made our brain think, instead of just saying, hey, man, just be. Like, you're not really in a life or death situation. You not getting back to this email is not that big a deal. Is that kind of what's happened to us?
You haven't been doing my coaching program by any chance, have you?
Not yet, brother. I can't wait, though.
I mean, here's the thing. There are four parts to your brain. This is, in simple terms, how it works biologically. There are four parts to your brain. The two most, well, really the only two you need to understand in detail about how this works is what I call your survival brain and your creative brain. And your creative brain is activated. You know, I'm sure your listeners will have had the experience from time to time where you are in the flow, when you can see exactly the right thing to do, the right answer to a problem. Maybe you wake up morning, you go, I've got a new idea. That's how I achieve that. Or you get some creative idea, or you're inspired to do something and it all works out, or, you know, things just work really well. This is actually, when all of those things are happening, what's active is this part of your brain, and it's in a biological location, a physical location in your brain. This isn't just a mental idea. This is physical. This part of your brain, which I call the creative brain, is activated. And that's the part that makes you the best that you can be. It gives you all the good ideas. It gives you the solutions to your problems. It tells you exactly what to do in every moment. And that's what I call, when you're activating that part of your brain, you're living in your natural creative state. You're feeling good, you're feeling inspired, you're loving, you're contributing, you're grateful, you're doing all these great things. And I'm sure all of us have felt this from time to time. That's the way we're supposed to live all the time, because that's when we are being our best and doing what needs to be done to be the best that we can be. But as you pointed out, there's only one time you're not supposed to be like that. And nature in the brain has provided, if you like, an emergency weapon that's only designed to be used when the saber-toothed tiger comes along, when you're faced with immediate threat or danger to your survival. And what the brain has is that fight or flight mechanism. So that's designed as a weapon on the very, very odd occasion that there's a threat to your survival comes into your life. Now, of course, when the brain was designed, you know, millions of years ago, you're right, there were saber-toothed tigers everywhere, but they aren't there anymore. And it's the misuse of this part. It's the seeing the tigers everywhere when they aren't there. That's what's stopping people from being the best that they can be. Because what happens when you activate that part of your brain, you shut down your creative brain. So you're literally shutting down all of your access to your resources to solve your problems, to know what to do, to know what your goals should be, to know everything. And people we don't realize that this is what's happening. And so whenever and the way we know this part of the brain is activated is whenever we feel fear, stress, frustration, anxiety, worry, what we're doing with our brain is we're activating that fight or flight part, and we're shutting down our creative part, creative brain. And so we're saying to ourselves, I don't know what to do. I've got to find the answer. What should my goals be? I've got to struggle. I've got to learn more information. I've got to put in much more effort. That part, when you're activating that part of your brain, it's not designed to give you the answers to any of those questions or to give you any results. It's just designed to get rid of that tiger that's there. So this is where the misuse of the brain comes in. And as you know, when I used to do this for years, trying to figure out everything. What do I need to do? Try and solve a problem. Try and go and learn more information. Try harder. And I'd make mistakes and I'd do the wrong thing and I would stay confused and I'd stay frustrated. And I'd say, why have I got all these problems in my life? Why are these things showing up? Well, they're there because when you're using that part of your brain, you're in a reactive state and you do all the wrong things and you can't see the big picture. You can't see the right things to do. So in a really real sense, all you need to do is learn how to shut down the fear-based part of your brain so that your creative brain can actually do its job and put you in the flow and get things working in your life.
I can see why people are very attracted to working with you, and here's why. You talk about the biological way that this is taking place, and versus you brought up law of attraction, or The Secret would be the example that most people know. And often people don't like the fact that that sounds woo-woo to me, Liam, where I'm going to put out positive vibes and I'm going to manifest everything great in my life. What you're actually saying is here's a tangible way to allow this natural flow, right? Whether you're a faith-based person or you're just universe or whatever thing you want to say. The truth is we are all connected through energy. And what I'm hearing is when I'm putting out that fight or flight, those are the energy. That's the signal I'm putting out. That's also what I'm going to attract into my world versus finding ways to be stress-free, quote unquote, or at least limit that stress. Now I'm allowing abundance into my life. How would you go about if I hit that kind of in the right, context? How do we start to let ourselves off the hook? What are some ways to de-stress? And I know you got a cool story I want to hear about. You being on a boat for 8 years, traveling the world. I can't wait to get to that. That sounds pretty stressful and stress-free at the same time. But how do people go about de-stressing themselves so they can really let that creative side come to fruition and really let us live that abundant life?
Well, there's really only 3 things you need to do, and none of them are difficult. Well, they take a bit of work maybe, but they're quite simple. The first thing is to understand how your brain works, because if you accept that your brain is the machine that every living thing has been given to ensure that it survives by being the best that it can be, which is what the brain actually is. If you can accept that, then all you need to do is to say, I need to understand how it works, because it is literally a mechanical machine. Because if you think what a machine is, it's something that has a specific purpose. It's designed to do a particular job. So your brain's job is to make you the best that you can be so that you have the greatest chance for survival. But if you think of another machine like a motor car, that has a very specific job to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And you know that a car is going to do that very predictably, it's going to do its job, and it's not going to be difficult, and it's going to be an enjoyable trip if you drive it the right way. But if you look at a motor car and you think, well, I don't know anything about it, I wonder how it works. Well, I know it's supposed to get me somewhere. Oh, it's got wheels. I think I know, I'll get out behind and I'll push it along. Maybe that's how it's supposed to work. And I'll put in all of this effort and the car's not going to move very far and it's just going to tire you out. And then you say to yourself, the problem is me. I'm not motivated enough. I'm not trying hard enough. I need to be stronger, build up my muscles and try harder. And someone else comes along and says, why are you doing that? You don't understand how it works. It's not supposed to be hard work. It's supposed to do that. You're just supposed to drive it the right way. So the first step is to understand how your brain works, because when you really understand what we were talking about, how when you activate the fight or flight part, you shut down your natural creative ability and your life building ability, if you like, all of the resources. When you really understand that and you realize that it's activated by fear, your subconscious fears, your frustrations, all of those things, which all have a basis in fear. When you realize that, you say, well, there's only one thing to do in my life: eliminate fear. That's it. And everything else, when I do that, I'll act, the right part of my brain will come into play and things will work out perfectly. And that's the way it works. So that's the first thing, is to understand how your brain, how it works, and to realize that fear is the enemy. Fear is what stops it from working properly. So then you only need to do 2 things after that. The first is to stop bringing stuff into your life that makes you feel bad. That conversation that you're having, excuse me, with that person that doesn't make you feel good. End the conversation. That business or that employee or that job or whatever you're doing, if it doesn't make you feel good, eliminate it from your life. You know, we all have this choice. And people say, well, I can't do that. Well, the reason they can't do that is because they're afraid. They don't understand that their brain, their creative brain, is going to replace all of that stuff with all the right things, far better things, when you're not being stressed and worried and you're not trying to figure it all out. So that's step number 2, is to eliminate, and you know, we do have the choice to pretty well eliminate everything that makes us feel bad. That's going to activate the wrong part of our brain. And then the third step, the third thing is to say, well, what have I already got in my mind, in my brain at the moment that's making me see the lions and the saber-toothed tigers? In other words, that's activating this thing because it's saying, I see something in your environment that is a threat to your survival, when it isn't actually there. You know, we've spent from the time we were born being confused about what our life actually is, and developing all these ideas and beliefs that we live in this dangerous world. We haven't been told that, well, actually we have been told, we'll talk about that in a second, but we don't realize that there is a part of us that will keep us safe. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep us having this great life, and every now and then if a tiger comes along, it'll deal with it. That's the way we're set up. So those are the 3 things. Understand your brain so that you realize that fear is the enemy. Get rid of things that make you feel bad, and then deal with the stuff inside you that's in your head that's making you feel bad as well.
Yeah, I really want to talk, because I coach on this a lot. Number 2, specifically giving yourself permission to set proper boundaries, to not, be in a relationship, be doing something that is bringing you pain or, nothing positive. It's fascinating to me, Liam, how we have these obligations, and I'm using air quotes for people not watching, obligations where we feel like, oh, I have to. Well, no, you don't have to do anything, truth be told. These are all, and you use the word choice. How do you go about really giving people permission to say, look, your brother is not a good, he's not bringing joy into your life. In fact, he's creating a lot of pain. Now, I know he's family, but you need to be able to set that boundary so that you can live your best life, which will actually allow you to help him even more by setting these boundaries. Is there a proper way to go about giving permission, or is it just that simple to be like, hey, you don't have to do any of this stuff. These are all choices?
Well, I think it's about understanding why you think you're obligated to something, whether it to be to have a relationship with that person or to do anything. And the only reason you feel obligated is because you have a fear. You have a subconscious fear of what would happen or what might happen if you didn't do what was expected or what you thought was the right thing. So that is what you need to deal with, is to get rid of these fears that you have about the consequences of just saying, I'm only going to allow good things into my life. And often that comes down to changing the meaning of what a relationship is, or what a situation is. But if we really knew and believed and understood that only good stuff was going to happen to us if we allowed this creative part of our brain, and if we got rid of it to work and we got rid of our fears, if we really knew that, we would get rid of our fears and all of the right things would happen. And maybe that relationship, maybe you wouldn't, who knows, maybe you wouldn't ever see that person again. Maybe you would, maybe they would change. And this is the other biggest problem with people that keeps people stuck. They keep trying to figure out what might happen if they do something. And the reality is, none of us know what's going to happen. And if you really, and people listening, really think about the way your life works out. As your life goes on, it just, all sorts of unexpected things happen. You can't control the behavior of other people. You can't control what's going to happen. All that's fear-based when you're trying to do that. You're trying to analyze things and work out what you should do and what might happen. That's all pointless stuff. And it's rooted in using this fear-based part of your brain. And if people really want to say, and I mentioned earlier about we've never been taught this stuff, you know, the best instruction manual on how to use your brain the right way is the Bible. And in fact, all religion and all spirituality teaches exactly how you should use your brain. And in the Bible, it says more than 360 times, be not afraid. Have those three words, be not afraid, more than 360 times. Now, it's not saying, now try not to be so worried about things and, don't try not to be as afraid. It's be not afraid. That's an instruction. When you are afraid, you are using the wrong part of your brain. You're not using the God-given, if you want to use that terminology, the part of your brain that's God has given you to say, off you go, create the best life possible. If you use that part of your brain, it will happen. And even in the Bible, I was brought up as a Christian. So that was the first place I looked for the answer to how do you have a great life and how do you, be successful, was in religion. And it says in the Bible, give no thought for tomorrow. Do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, and wear. It'll all be provided for you. So why is everybody worried? And what they don't realize is when you don't worry, that's when you allow this part of your brain to get it doing its job and making sure that happens. But you can't do it when you're stuck in subconscious fear and stress and anxiety. It's just blocking all of that off. It's a bit like saying to God giving you a motor car and you saying to God, oh, this doesn't work properly. I've tried pushing it and it doesn't go. He's provided you with the machine. He's told you how to do it, how to use it. Be not afraid. Give no thought for tomorrow. He's told you how to use it. Now, if you're not using it the right way, well, you can't blame God for your problems.
Yeah, I love that because so much of fear is rooted in future. And one of the things Lao Tzu said 2,500 years ago, I just simplified it, past is pain, future is anxiety, present is everything. Like truly being in the present moment is everything. You mentioned a word that I think would be really important for everyone listening, because they're high achievers. On most of my audience are entrepreneurs, they're building big businesses, and they're doing cool stuff, which brings a lot of their stress to their world. And goals is a huge part of what they do. So one of the topics you have is setting, and I want to really emphasize the right goals. What does that look like, Liam? What should people, as they want to be more stress-free, they want to succeed and be happy in life, like I said, happy, healthy, wealthy, that's what my show is all about. What are some of these right goals that we should be setting so we're not setting ourselves up for failure or that repeat cycle of creating the stresses all over again?
Yeah, well, goal setting is one of the most misunderstood things of all that's keeping people really stuck. And in fact, one of the people I've studied a lot with, I've followed, he's a very successful businessman and a great researcher and spiritual person as well into how this all works. He made the comment, goals are self-sabotage. And when you think about it, what you're doing when you're setting a goal is you're limiting yourself. And particularly but there's really two sets of goals. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have goals, but the right goals are the goals that find you, not that you go looking for. Because most of the time when people are trying to set goals, they're in a stressed state. So they're using this fight, flight part of their brain that doesn't know what you want and it doesn't know how to get you there. It's not designed for that. But so you sit down, and I've done all this. I've been to lots of goal setting workshops and things where you sit down and you try and figure out what you want. You don't know what you want. You can't know. You don't. And we know this because the really significant things that happen in life are totally unexpected. You don't have a goal that I'm going to meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. and you write down a full description of the person you end up marrying. Where do they come from? They showed up. So it's really important to stop this obsession with setting goals and saying, when goals come along, when I allow my creative brain when I free it to do its job, to find me and to create the best life for me possible, and I really trust and know that it's going to do that, then I don't need to set any goals. I just need to do what shows up in my life. Now, sometimes when you're in that state, a goal will show up in your life. So you walk into a house and you go, I'm going to buy this house. And this has happened to me. It's double my price range. I can't afford it, but there's something that tells me I'm just going to be living in this house. and you work towards it, but it's not full of stress and struggle. You know, you're a little bit, wow, this is a bit scary at times, but you just have the sense that it's going to happen, and it does, and unexpected things happen, and it all just works. The same with when you meet somebody, you go, I'm going to marry that person, you know, and it works. So that's the only value, true value, and this is what I teach people as well, is you've got to get into the state where if you're going to have a goal, it has to come from that part of your brain. And most of the time, you might not have any goals, you know, but if you're trying to set goals from the fear-based part of your brain, you're going to set the wrong goals, you're going to struggle. This is why only 2 to 3% of goals ever get achieved. You know, you're going to struggle. And if you get there, if you actually do manage to achieve it, it's not going to make you happy anyway, because it's not your creative brain bringing you what you really want. So I could go on and on about goals, but, you know, it's such a tragedy that people are stuck in this goal setting mindset, rather than realizing they've got this creative brain that is going to bring them. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to put in some effort, obviously, but it's not struggle. You're doing the right things, that things are showing up and it's all working. That's the way we're supposed to live, with effort rather than struggle.
Yeah, the intuition part, I want to talk on that for a minute, because you brought up the example. My wife, I met her at 23, and I knew the moment I saw her, I was going to marry her. I just knew. Now, I'm 6'5", guy from Montana. She's 5'2", little Asian gal from California. None of it made any damn sense, but I just knew. And my point to saying that, Liam, is for me, I really try to quiet my mind, meditate. That meditation would be my biggest form to stay mindful, to really be in the present moment. And that allows me to trust my gut more and more as I've practiced for, gosh, it's consistently practiced for over 15 years, all meditating every day. Do you have ways to where you really trust that intuition? Because like you said, I walked into that house, I just knew I was going to buy it, even if it didn't make any darn sense. I could feel, and to me, that's an energy, that's intuition. How do we trust that more and more? Do you have some tangible tips and thoughts for people to really be able to say, hey, when these things come along, whether it's energy or intuition or gut or whatever the heck you want to call it, how do we follow that more, Liam, so we are more in flow and abundance?
Well, I think it's basically a habit that you develop. I mean, we've been in the habit most of our lives, most people, of not trusting that and trying to force things to happen. So you have to realize it's about creating a new habit, which is, if you like, letting go and saying, well, this feels right. I'm not going to be afraid that I'm going to make a mistake. You know, that's what stops so many people from doing the right things and keeps them doing the wrong things, if anything at all. But I'm just going to trust and allow and see what happens. I'm going to let go. And once you start doing that, all it takes is 1 or 2 experiences where you go, wow, what happened there? That's really good. And you get an experience of this new habit working, and then it snowballs from there. And then you eventually get to the point where you just trust that everything's perfect. Everything's going to happen the right way. And, you know, sometimes you're obviously going to get stressed, but it's because you fall into the old bad habit of not trusting, not allowing your creative brain. So it is a habit. It's like anything. It's like if you want to lose weight, you can understand intellectually how it works and what you need to do. So what I've explained about the brain, you know, you can understand it intellectually. I need to get rid of fear so that the creative part of my brain is activated. I can understand that. But getting in the habit of actually doing it takes a little bit of effort before you see results. You know, and if you're dieting, you know you have to stop eating the wrong foods, but you might not lose any weight for a week or a month. But it doesn't stop you from actually understanding and actually doing it, because you know the results will come. So it's the same with this. The results will take a little while. They're not going to be instant, but once they start happening, you really do have that shift in your awareness to say, I understand this is how it works, you know, and it makes life so much more exciting. Instead of worrying about what's going to happen or trying to figure things out or analyze it or trying to predict the future, you just deal with what you've got in the moment, and you go, I wonder where this is going to lead. You know, you just keep taking that next step, and it becomes you mentioned I've been on a boat for 8 years. I didn't know that was going to happen. That came completely out of left field. It was not on any goals list that I had. But that's what life becomes, is an adventure. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a struggle. We're not here to struggle. We're here to do what every other form of life in nature does, which is to be the best that it can be and just exist in harmony with itself. That's what we're here to do.
I have to ask you about the boat, just because I had heard from a mutual friend that you had traveled around the world for 8 years on a boat. That was how it was prefaced to me. And I said, wow, well, A, that's fascinating. B, I'm sure there's quite a few lessons learned. And obviously, let yourself off the hook. I think boat, I think fishing. I'm like, maybe they're related. So I'm going to put it out there. Tell me about this experience, what you learned, what was the most fascinating part, and just how it went, because not very many people are going to do what you did, which is cruise around the world, live on a boat, and just experience. That's fascinating.
Yeah, well, it all came about through that wonderful experience of losing everything. Because when you do that, it's like everywhere is up, and as I say, I changed the way I was using my brain. Instead of having expectation, I really allowed what was meant to happen. And I thought, well, things can't get any worse. I give up. I give up trying. I'll just see what happens. So things just started to show up in my life. And travel, I've been traveling now nonstop for 12 years. My partner and I, we don't live anywhere. We just travel around. And it's very much about taking the next step and seeing what opportunity comes up. And the opportunity to get a boat came up. Or we woke up one day and I said, I think my partner said, she said, why don't we get a boat? Yeah, good idea. And so many things fell into place as a result of that thought, that idea, that, we from then on, or even before then, we were like, well, this is coming from somewhere else. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and just allow it all to happen. So yes, so I've spent 8 years on a boat. Before that, I was in a motorhome for 18 months. And now my partner and I think this is our 10th country this year so far that we visited. And we just travel around, but we never really plan anything much more than beyond what does the next thing feel right to do. And for me, that's been traveling around the world. But the point I really get through to people I work with and to people listening is, you have a unique blueprint. Everyone has their own unique blueprint. You have wired into every cell of your body, the stuff called DNA, which is a blueprint of who you are and the best version of who you are. And your creative brain knows exactly, not only knows exactly what that blueprint is, but its job is to make sure that is what is expressed in your life, the best version of who you are. So instead of copying someone else, all you need to do is to allow this creative brain to bring your perfect life to you, and whatever form that looks like.
In your travels, did you find culturally certain areas that really understand your line of thinking and utilizing the creative far more than, let's say, my experience, which is, outside of living in the Netherlands for, 6-10 months, whatever it was, in college, I've really lived in the US the rest of my time. So you having those experiences, have you felt Eastern versus Western, or, certain continents really understand this concept better than others?
Well, most of my time's been spent in Europe. So I haven't really because that's what interests me, even though I'm originally from New Zealand. I've spent a bit of time there as well. But one thing I've noticed and I think people are fairly similar wherever you go, but one difference you notice is the difference between, or the relationship between a person's happiness and their lack of expectation. When someone is just living in the present, and maybe there's somebody who's on a street corner selling something, but they give you a smile, and you can tell they are their energy is better than somebody who's stressed and, their head down and, and head full of problems. So that really is the difference between people. And it's been said that nature is 98% successful. If you look around the natural world, 98% of living things are being the best they can be. There's a very low failure rate. There's about 2%. Maybe a tree is planted in the wrong place, or there's a bit of a lack of food in an area for a short while, or whatever it is. But it's 98% successful. But we as humans, we're the opposite. We're 98% unsuccessful. Most people would say they're not living to their highest potential. They're stressed. They're not being the best that they can be. And the only difference is whether they're just willing to allow what shows up in their life to show up. And that doesn't mean give up and just sit back in a corner and watch things happen, but it means interacting with your life rather than trying to struggle against it. And I think that's a fairly universal thing, really.
I mean, brother, I think anyone listening to the show is that they want more. They need more of Liam in their life because people want to be happy. That is the goal. I just think we've lost our way and forgotten how to do it. And so much of what you're talking about can help people transform and really, like you said, create new habits so they can be happier. With that being said, you mentioned your program. I would love for you to just let everyone know where they can find you, Liam, your programs, what you have available, and just how to connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, everything's really just on my website, which is my name, liamnaden.com. I've got a new podcast there, which talks about all the Let Yourself Off the Hook podcast, and I've got coaching programs and lots of and I also have a free mini course if people want to really find a quick way to get an understanding of how their brain works. I have a course called How to Unlock Your Success Brain, and it's really just a simple 3-step process that gets you moving from trying to force your life into a preconceived mold using the wrong part of your brain to allowing magic to happen in your life. Sorry to use that word, but that's what it feels like. And magic being biological truth in a magical sense that appears magical. So that's called How to Unlock Your Success Brain. It's just all on my website, liamnaden.com.
Brother, I appreciate you coming on, sharing that free mini course. My gosh, that's awesome. And just, I love the concept. I think this is applicable to every person. That's what's so beautiful about your program. The world is far too stressed. Like you said, the failure rate in terms of that is so high. So thank you for sharing, man. This is really awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to talk to you.
You guys, he literally talked about biologically, this is how it works. These are ways to let yourself off the hook, be happier, be more abundant, be healthy because you're not stressed. Everything increases if you follow what Liam is doing. So go check him out. Go check out his course. Share this with someone. Share this with a bunch of people. Who do you know that's way too stressed in their life right now that needs to let themselves off the hook? I guarantee that list is long and abundant. Share this. Send some love out. Let's get more people utilizing Liam's stuff because it's awesome. And until next time, remember, I appreciate y'all. Your mindset matters. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.